So if you are a trans person, right? Oh my god. Okay, let's go for Comic Sans. Why the not? If you're a trans person and then it's like, okay, you have gender dysphoria, right? Like you need to get diagnosed with gender dysphoria. You're not valid because you need to be clinically diagnosed with gender dysphoria, which is like already like medical gatekeeping and so on, right? The levels of dysphoria also varies to people. There are also, you know, gender fluid people that still fall under the label trans, but like this is like the Transmedicalist route. And then it's like, okay, so if you are diagnosed with like gender dysphoria, then actually you need to be on HRT, right? You need to medically transition. Preferably, you should have already been on puberty blockers. You should have been on puberty blockers because in order to be like a real woman, you shouldn't even go through male puberty because like that is already like making you too masculine and so on. And if you don't bother, right? Like it's too late for you. If you don't start transitioning at like 16 and so on, like it's too late to you, actually don't bother. And you should just like live and pretend that you are your assigned gender at birth, right? So what is like the next step, right? You go on HRT. So actually you need to have like a bottom dysphoria and so on. So you need to have like surgery, right? You need to have like FFS and so on because there are like a lot of things that are like wrong with you. You need to have like top surgery. You need to meet these societal expectations that are so astronomically difficult to achieve and expensive to achieve. If you don't achieve it, if you don't have like the blessing of like good genetics and so on, like actually you shouldn't bother. You should just like drop out. All of these things are not expected from cis women, by the way. There are some aspects of like cis women being invalidated if they're like overweight, if they have short hair, if they have broad shoulders, if they're too tall and so on, like all of these things. But there's still a general consensus of like, oh well, you're still a woman though. So what is the next step? Then you have like your surgeries, you put in all of the effort, right? You need to like do voice training. You need to exercise. When it comes to like trans women, you need to fulfill beauty expectations, like in general, and gender norms and so on. You need to fulfill all of these things. And actually, if you do, then you're the ones who are reinforcing all of these things. You're actually the ones, right? Like trans people are actually the ones who are doing like gender stereotypes and shit, right? That's always the gotcha that is being used. But it's like expected of us. Because if we don't, then like, why do you even bother? And then there's also like this thing, you're not on HRT, so you have to put in even more effort. You have to put in even more effort because like you're going through the wrong puberty, actually like your genetics and so on, right? Everything is like too masculine, everything is like too male. So if you want to be like a real woman, you have to go like the extra route and put in even more effort just to look like a woman. But actually, in reality, you will never be a woman because you don't have like the right reproductive organs. This is like the final thing where like people drop out of, right? And it's kind of like a scale. If you want to be a trans woman, you need to have like gender dysphoria. You need to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Actually, you should have been diagnosed with gender dysphoria as a kid. Should have gone on puberty blockers. Actually, puberty blockers are bad and harmful and so on. Like, we should get rid of like puberty blockers, right? Then you should have started HRT with like actually 16. Actually, like this is so incredibly harmful and so on. So actually you should have started HRT with 18. But like 18, you also need to have like the fortunate genetics of already looking like a woman. You know, like you can't be too tall. You need to match all of like these expectations. And actually like HRT for adults is also really bad. Like you should get rid of that completely. The same when it comes to like surgeries and so on. Actually, you shouldn't do that at all. If you have gender dysphoria, you should just do like the things of like you need to do voice training, right? Because you need to sound like a woman, you need to act like a woman, you need to behave like a woman, you need to look like a woman, but also without the help of like hormones and going through the right puberty. Actually, you should look like a woman despite going through masculinizing changes that manifest because of the wrong puberty, right? And if you don't, actually, you should just hide, right? Because like the goal of like being trans is to just be cis, actually, right? If you're a trans woman, you should just look sound and be a cis woman. People shouldn't know that you're actually trans because that is too disruptive to society. But also, all of like the steps that like help with all of this is actually evil and grotesque, and it's a experiment and so on. So actually, you should just like dismiss all of these things and just pretend that you're a cis man. And then you're sitting there, and at every single step, there are some people who are like, well, I support trans people, but I don't support the trans people who are like activists. I don't support the trans people that are visible. I don't support like trans women that look like men. I don't support trans women who don't have like surgeries. Like at every single step, people are going to be like, yeah, okay, I support you until now, until this thing is being met. And if not, you should just not even exist. You should not be in public, right? If you're a trans woman, you should actually acknowledge that you'll always be a man. You need to look like a woman, but also you need to go into like the men's restroom and also stay out of women's sports because like that is unfair. And also you need to not have like the surgery because like I fetishize your existence and it's kind of hot if a woman has a dick. All of like these things constantly happen, and then they still like gaslight us. There are a lot of trans people who internalize these things, which obviously is then being projected onto someone like me who's making the trans community look bad because I'm so visible, and also I'm advocating for puberty blockers because they are, you know, actually pretty useful if you're struggling with gender dysphoria and you don't want to be rushed into irreversible changes and you want to be given time to work with experts. But no, I'm making like the trans community look bad because I want trans kids to live. It's so frustrating to be trans and to have our identity, our expression and so on policed at every single step. We're invalidated. We are having labels put on us like, oh, you're not a trans woman, you're just a femboy, you're just a gay man, you're just this. Actually, you're not a lesbian, you're just a straight man, you're just a straight gay feminine man. I was like, there's nothing wrong with being a feminine man, but the problem is I'm not a man because it doesn't match my gender identity. Because the only thing that like actually makes you trans is obviously having like this mismatch between like your gender identity and your assigned gender at birth. In what way this manifests actually differs from person to person. And also having this mismatch doesn't necessarily mean that it is so strong to cause you to have depression, anxiety, and so on, right? Like these are like the things when it comes to like this gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is not considered like a mental illness and so on, but it can cause a lot of mental health issues like depression, suicidality, and so on, right? We know provably if you have gender dysphoria, going through this transitioning journey actually helps you. Being in a supportive environment and getting gendered correctly, not because they align with your primary sex characteristics, but because with how you identify as, is actually really beneficial. And it's just like, people expect me to sound like a cis woman despite going through male puberty and having testosterone negatively impact my voice, changing my vocal cords irreversibly. I need to now put in the effort, because if I don't meet this expectation of sounding like a cis woman, whatever the fuck that means, because apparently there's no nuance whatsoever at all when it comes to like how women talk, like how real women sound like, because I don't meet this arbitrary expectation of like every single person who always has like a different idea, a different concept of what women sound like, because it's based on their environment, what they grew up with, the anime that they consume. I shouldn't even talk. I should use a voice changer or get like a vocal cord surgery, even though that doesn't do anything and it's like incredibly risky. It's so fucking annoying. There are incredibly high beauty expectations for cis women, obviously by design, because if women focus on their bodies and have like all of their flaws and like constantly get like teared apart on it, it makes it easier to, you know, oppress women. But the thing is, like, I'm expected to meet these things despite going through male puberty and testosterone obviously affecting your body differently than an estrogen dominant puberty. It's so annoying. And then they still Even if you meet all of these goalposts, they will still insist that you'll always be a man because you do not have the right reproductive organs. So what the fuck is the point of, you know, constantly trying to appeal to every single person on like all of like these superficial things when it always comes down to the fact that they can impregnate me, and that is the reason why I'll never be a woman. Everything is literally designed to just make us miserable, and so many trans people internalize it, they give it back. They look at those that are actually, you know, like living their lives and like being happy despite all of their little flaws that you see by like hyper analyzing like facial features and like measuring their you know, distance between the eyes and, you know, how the pupils widen or shit like that. There's so many trans people, even like trans creators, who have a problem with me advocating for like a supportive environment for trans people, because trans people are actually not oppressed. It's just like people like Nyara that are like too annoying, and that's why you get hate crime. What about the children that are constantly having to take their own lives because society takes away the only care that makes their life worth living? What about them? Who's speaking up for them? Should I just like ignore it because like it's not my place to talk about these things? It's not my place to talk about like trans topics because I'm actually making it my entire personality. It just sucks when it comes to like, you know, people who suffer like me to be like, oh, why are you this vocal? Why are you this out there? Oh, you're just doing it for attention. Oh, you just want to rage bait conservatives who are taking your rights away and you're constantly throwing like grooming allegations at you and so on. Oh, you just want to be like in the spotlight getting like all of the negativity. Why can't you just like hide and stay in stealth and like have like your small little community, and like why don't you just do the things that is expected of VTubers? And then it's like, okay, you listen to this, well, now what, right? Society sucks, things are being hard, you're struggling because of like all of the cruel systems that cis people laid out for you. You struggle because of this. Now what? Well, don't fucking give this pain to other trans people who are suffering like you, maybe. Maybe that could be like a start. Maybe try to, you know, boost each other, get into like a supportive environment. We are going through all of this together. We are elevating each other. We're helping each other to like cope with the fact society just desperately wants us dead. But no, it's the vocal trans people. They are the ones. You know, we used to have like so many rights. Actually, 10 years ago, the trans community had more rights. Like, yeah, but that was when we weren't like hyper visible and when used as like a political tool. That is why we had more rights, not because trans people just went too loud. We should have just stayed as like a little fetish tag. It's so fucking annoying. And this shit needs to change. And like in my last video, I called this out, right? This like hatred within the trans community for other trans people. I know what it's like. I understand the struggles. I get it. But like, why do you let it out on other trans people who want like a better future? That's what I wanted to talk about. That's what I wanted to crash out on. But yeah, I appreciate y'all, and I know you're struggling. I know it's hard. I'm struggling too. I get it. But we're going through this together. And there are people out there who love and respect you, no matter which stage in your transitioning journey you are in right now. And that is what we need more of.